The life of an architect is entirely controlled by his boss, who asks him to kill an unknown man in a car accident. A missing wife returns to a police officer, but he is convinced she has been replaced by a double. Members of a sexual cult are searching for a new messiah who must meet certain requirements. The film begins with a story titled Death of RMF. A man with the initials RMF enters a house where he is met by Vivian, who is talking on the phone with Raymond. After receiving an envelope, the man leaves. RMF is a mysterious character who serves as the only connecting thread between the three stories. The architect, Robert, waits in his car, a blue BMW, to collide with him at an intersection. After receiving medical assistance, he returns home to his sleeping wife. After reading a book, he falls asleep. In the morning, his wife Sarah tells him that Raymond sent a rare broken tennis racket of a famous player. At work, Robert destroys a letter with instructions on how to behave the previous day, including reading in bed. His boss, Raymond, summons him. From their conversation, it becomes clear that the boss gives him instructions on how to act. Robert apologizes for not going to the hospital after the accident. Raymond insists that the accident must be repeated at the same time and in the same place, but at a higher speed. Robert hesitates, unwilling to cause a fatal outcome. The boss gives him time to think. In the evening, Robert visits his boss at home to refuse to kill the stranger in the accident, even if, according to Raymond, the man agreed to die. The boss forces him to enter and leave several times, but after failing to get his consent, he fires his subordinate. The next morning, Robert sees that the racket is gone. He explains to his wife that Raymond took back the gift, and at the same time he reveals that the boss had actually been controlling his life. He was the one who brought them together. Robert also confesses that he drugged her coffee with medication, also on Raymond's orders. The next morning, Robert finds that his wife has taken all her belongings and left, not responding to his calls. The architect tries to get a job at a competitor's firm, but the manager, having invited him for an interview, does not show up himself. Out of despair, Robert goes to a bar, where, unused to making independent decisions, he can't even choose a drink without the bartender's advice. He attempts to strike up a conversation with a girl by telling her the story of his injury, but it doesn't work. Robert follows his boss waiting in the parking lot. He begs for forgiveness and a second chance, but Raymond refuses. This turns out to be a nightmare, but in the morning, the man, in reality, begs his boss. Just like in his dream, the boss refuses and dismisses his former subordinate. Out of despair, Robert returns to the bar, where he repeats his approach for meeting someone. But first he kicks the wall hard to bruise his leg for credibility. This is how he meets Rita, who gives him a ride to the hospital. The next day he waits for her with flowers to invite her to dinner. She agrees, but at the appointed time, she does not show up and doesn't answer his calls. Disappointed, Robert receives a message the next morning that Rita was in an accident. Visiting her in the hospital, he sees RMF on a gurney, as well as Raymond and Vivian leaving Rita's room. Without giving anything away, Robert helps her get to the bathroom, and while she is taking care of her business, he takes her house keys from her bag. After the visit, he sneaks into Rita's house, where he finds irrefutable evidence of her connection to Raymond, the same tennis racket. Taking the gift, Robert returns to the hospital. He asks a nurse for help to get to the bathroom, only to break it and change into a uniform. Using the nurse's keycard, Robert heads to the room of the comatose RMF and kidnaps him, taking him to the parking lot. He dumps him on the asphalt, then gets behind the wheel and runs over the body several times to make sure he is dead. Then Robert goes to Raymond's place. Vivian opens the door, and Robert, crying, confesses that he completed the task. The three of them embrace on the sofa, and Raymond tells the girl that he always knew Robert wouldn't let him down. He killed a man and retained the favor of his boss, who holds power over him. This episode ends here. The second segment is called RMF Flies. Police officer Daniel is getting ready for work. He is suffering due to the disappearance of his wife, Liz. When the phone rings, static noises are heard on the other end, and he thinks it's Liz trying to contact him. His colleagues are concerned about Daniel's condition. His best friend and partner Neil, along with his wife Marta, come to visit him. During dinner, Daniel asks them to watch a video with him. At first they refuse, not wanting to reopen old wounds, but they agree when their host starts to cry. The video turns out to be of a fun adventure they all had together. After dinner, Daniel is informed that his wife, who had been shipwrecked with a team, has been found. In the morning, he meets the helicopter, piloted by RMF, and accompanies his wife to the hospital. Of the 5 expedition members, only she and a man named Jonathan survived. The woman says they ate fruits, animals, and fish, but flashes of cannibalism appear in her memories. When Liz is discharged, the cat hisses at her out of anger. Then she greedily devours a chocolate cake, which surprises Daniel, as his wife never ate chocolate. The oddities continue. In the evening, her favorite shoes no longer fit her feet. After dinner, Liz starts to itch between her big toes. She suggests to the guests that they go up to the bedroom and record another video, but they politely decline. While the women clear the table, Daniel confides in Neil about his paranoid suspicion that this is not his wife, but some sort of double. His suspicions deepen when Liz demands intimacy and hits him with his own baton. At a party celebrating Liz's return, Daniel does not share the general excitement and visits Jonathan in the hospital. He tells Jonathan's wife that the man in the hospital bed is not her husband. Distrusting his wife, Daniel refuses to eat the food she prepares. His wife confesses that she is pregnant, but the future father feels no particular joy. When the phone rings again with static on the line, he thinks it is his real wife. When the phone disappears, he accuses Liz of hiding it so that he cannot learn the truth, causing him to have violent outbursts. At work, after pulling over some offenders, Daniel finds a mobile phone on a female driver that he recognizes as his own. Then he points a gun at a stoned man and shoots him in the arm, then apologizes. Daniel licks the wound, horrifying his partner. Following this incident, the doctor prescribes Daniel antipsychotics to calm him down. Detached, he lies at home, eating nothing and not talking to his wife. She tries to find common ground with him until one day he asks her to cut off one of her fingers and cook it for him. After thinking about it for a moment, the woman takes a knife and cuts off her left thumb, as if no less useful finger could be found on the whole hand. She then prepares dinner for her husband and serves it to him in bed. The next day, Daniel tells the doctor that Liz cut off her own finger trying to feed it to him, and in the morning, she even beat herself up. He asks the doctor to take his wife to a clinic, but the doctor believes the patient is exaggerating the scale of the tragedy. Liz, with bruises on her body, undergoes an examination. The doctors diagnose a miscarriage and ask her to talk about domestic violence. The woman says her husband did beat her, but these are side effects of the pills. At home, Daniel asks her to cook something more substantial than a finger, like an arm, a leg, or a liver, which he read is very nutritious. Sometime later, he finds his wife sitting in a chair. On the floor, there are 2 puddles of blood, one of which contains a severed liver. His loving wife had removed it with a kitchen knife before dying. There is a knock on the door. Daniel opens it. On the doorstep stands a second Liz. He joyfully hugs and kisses her, while the first Liz, who had complied with even the most horrific and absurd requests from her husband in an attempt to keep his love, sits lifeless in the chair. Thus ends another episode. The third segment is titled RMF Eats a Sandwich. Emily is examining a transgender girl named Anna, carefully measuring her parameters. A morgue employee allows a fresh corpse to be removed and transported to a separate room. There, Emily, Anna, and their companion Andrew conduct an experiment, attempting to revive the dead person by laying hands on them. Anna fails, even when the observers, at her request, turn away. The partners report their failure to the leadership of their religious cult and head to a motel. On the way, Emily reveals that she knew it would end this way because she had a prophetic dream the night before. She was stuck in a swimming pool, and a female swimmer saved her. This girl is their chosen one, but Anna does not resemble her. In the morning, while her colleague is still asleep, Emily goes to her old house. Waiting for the man and his daughter to leave, she sneaks into the daughter's bedroom to leave a gift and sprinkle her with some special cult water. After picking Andrew up from the motel, Emily heads to the headquarters of their sexual cult. There, they are greeted by the spiritual leaders, Omi and Akka. They are not upset by the failure, since they already have a new candidate for the Messiah in mind. That evening, the travelers take turns engaging in activities with Omi, while Andrew jealously listens to Emily's moans through the door. The next day, they observe a ritual of purification from filth and contagion. One of the cult novices is locked in a sauna so that the impurities will leave her body through sweat. When she loses consciousness, she is carried out, and Akka licks the sweat from her stomach. After analyzing the taste, she declares her clean. The cult leaders then cry, shedding their own tears into a tank from which the novices draw water that is deemed drinkable. Before a new mission, Ami shows Emily a yacht that is meant for the Messiah. Emily and her partner then go to check out the next candidate. When they stop at a diner for a snack, a woman named Rebecca approaches them to say they are looking for her sister Ruth. Andrew introduces himself with a fake name to get rid of the unexpected interlocutor, but she addresses Emily by her real name and gives her a business card. After she leaves, the cultists discuss the criteria for being chosen. The Messiah is supposed to be a woman, one of a pair of twins, with the other twin needing to be dead. Since Rebecca is alive, her sister does not fit the description. Later, when Emily visits her daughter's bedroom, she runs into her daughter and ex-husband, Joseph, on her way out. The family invites the estranged mother to dinner. Emily and her partner head to see the next candidate, only to discover that the girl they need has already died. At the hotel, Andrew falls ill, and with a fever, Emily goes to the pharmacy for medicine. On the way, she encounters Joseph, who again invites her to dinner. After giving Andrew the pills as soon as he falls asleep, Emily goes to visit her daughter. The girl is already asleep, and the man, remembering the past, offers Emily a drink. While preparing cocktails, he slips a sleeping pill into Emily's glass. When she passes out, Joseph fulfills his family duty. Emily quietly sneaks out of the house, but outside she is already awaited by the cult leaders, offended that she broke the ban on intimacy with anyone outside the cult. They take her to the headquarters, where they offer her a purification procedure, sweating in a sauna until she loses consciousness. After the ritual, Akka tastes her but decides that Emily is contaminated with impurities. She is thrown out of the cult over the fence. Despite all her pleas, she is only given a small sum for her services. Not knowing what to do, Emily returns to the city where Rebecca finds her again. Her new friend tells her how, in their youth, after being left without parents, she and her sister threw a party. During the event, a drunken Rebecca jumped into a swimming pool, forgetting that there was no water. She remembered breaking her bones and bleeding out, but then waking up at home without any signs of injury. Rebecca attributes this miraculous healing to her sister Ruth and believes that she is the Messiah. But there is one problem. The true chosen one must have a dead twin. Catching a stray dog on the street, Emily visits Ruth, who works as a veterinarian. After treating the dog's wound, Ruth lets the visitors leave. Back at the hotel, Emily removes the bandage and sees that the wound has healed without even leaving a scar. After sending the dog away, she notices Joseph and her daughter outside the hotel. They want to bring her back home. Instead of a happy reunion, Emily turns her daughter against her father, calling him contaminated and unclean. In the morning, she is woken up by a call from Rebecca, who has come up with a way to solve the problem of the living twin. When Emily visits her, she sees the hostess, in a swimsuit, repeat her teenage stunt and dive into an empty pool. Coming down, the former cultist confirms that the twin is dead. Now, there is only one thing left: to test Ruth. Emily goes to the clinic, ostensibly to thank the doctor. During the process, she injects her with a tranquilizer and then measures her physical characteristics. The final and most important test is once again carried out in the morgue, where a bribed pathologist sets aside the body of RMF. Ruth has not yet regained consciousness, but even so, her hand placed on the corpse had an encouraging effect. He sits up. Surprised by what has happened, a joyful Emily performs a victory dance in the parking lot, then loads Ruth into the back seat and speeds back to the cult. On the way, the Messiah comes to her senses, causing the driver to become distracted. This leads to the inevitable. Emily, barely avoiding an oncoming car, crashes into a fence. Momentum does its work. The unbuckled Ruth is thrown through the windshield and dies, putting an end to the dreams of the cult brainwashed kidnapper. This is where the third segment almost ends. In a post-credits scene, the revived RMF, living up to the novella's title, eats a sandwich. When ketchup drips onto his shirt, a waitress hands him a napkin to wipe the stain, and on this kind note, the film ends.